This episode of Simple Civics Greenville County is brought to you by Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, providing free books to children 0 to 5 throughout Greenville County. To sign up, visit greenvillefirststeps.org/freebooks. That's greenvillefirststeps.org/freebooks.
Local school boards are among the earliest elected bodies created in the United States. Here in Greenville County Schools, 12 local leaders serve on the Board of Trustees and carry an enormous responsibility to represent their community and meet the needs of a growing and high-achieving district. How do they do that? I'm Catherine Schumacher with Public Education Partners, and on today's episode of Simple Civics Ed Talks, we are bringing you School Board 101 to help you understand more about how our school board operates, what it can do, and what it can't. I'm joined by Derek Lewis, Executive Director of Greenville First Steps and a former Greenville County Schools trustee. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Simple Civics Ed Talks. This is School Board 101 is what we're calling this. And I'm joined by my partner, Derek Lewis. Excited to have him here as a recovering school board member.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so our school board, our board of trustees, is such an important part of understanding how Greenville County Schools works and the work that our trustees do day in and day out to understand what's going on, to support the administration, to ask hard questions, to represent their constituencies and all of that. So I thought it would be great to kind of give an overview of what the school board is, how it works, how it functions, and some of the key parts that we would want folks who are listening to this to understand from a civic engagement standpoint. First question, describe what the Greenville County Schools Board of Trustees looks like.
I think that school boards are probably the most local form of government.
It's democracy in action.
I mean, probably the kids on your street are going to a public school at some point during the day and are getting services that are taxpayer funded, that are both improving their outcomes and improving our community in ways that most people don't see with like road construction or with, a new commercial development that's being planned. Like, I just think it's the most local form of government.
Yeah. It's literally in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I loved serving on the school board. It was also fascinating to me the number of people who thought that school board members were appointed and not elected. Usually when I asked them to put a sign in their yard and they were like, "Oh, I thought the governor just picked you."
That's just the state school board.
Which would have been lovely, I think, to have just been appointed and not elected because the campaigning was exhausting. But that's a different podcast for another day. So I think one thing people should know is that there are 12 school board members for the entire county. And that is one person representing a 12th of Greenville County's population.
Right. So they're single member districts. They have it's like a map. There are lines on a map that determines, who they represent.
And so if you look at the map, they're pretty similar to the county council maps. Basically, my area went from essentially Greenville High School to Malden High School. And they are adjusted every time the census comes through. And they are nonpartisan, which is, I think, another thing that's different about school board races from most races. Is that you don't run in a primary, you don't get a party endorsement, you typically are just running as a person who wants to do this. Because they're nonpartisan, that means anyone who wants to run for school board can sign up to run for school board and they can put their name on the ballot, and there's not a huge, process to get in there.
The value of that from a access standpoint for people who want to serve is really meaningful because, running for elected office now is expensive. And the process of campaigning is expensive. And so having that opportunity where where it's nonpartisan, and also, I like to say, potholes are nonpartisan, and I'd like for schools to be nonpartisan too. And so I think it's a really wonderful component of what our school board is and how it's set up. So, all right, so 12 folks.
It is really great. And I mean, if you look at those folks, most of them were PTA officers, most of them were SIC or Booster Club officers, or they're former teachers, they're usually people who are somehow have a relationship with the school.
They've been a teacher maybe. Yeah, I'm thinking about who's on there now. Yep.
And decided like, okay, this is so important to me that I want to help influence that work. And so I think it's, it's just a great microcosm of our district. And so those 12 people work with the superintendent and they approve board policy, approve the budget, and manage the superintendent. And really those are the only three things they do. Everything else kind of is influencing those things. But at the end of the day, like our board policies, our budget, and our superintendent are the three things that the board kind of can manage.
Yeah. It's a policy. It is a policymaking board, and that's I think probably was a learning curve too. What are the responsibilities that a board has, and what are the responsibilities that the board doesn't have oversight over, and what does the admin do versus? I think that is all very interesting. So, what are the processes like? What did that look like? What was your job?
Yeah, so a lot of it came from those three things. And so, I think a good example is like school, like attendance areas. So if a parent called me and said, I have been zoned for Augusta Circle and I would prefer to be at Blythe, like there is a process to move you. The board cannot look at that family and move that family from Augusta Circle to Blythe. That requires action. And so those processes are like approving the attendance maps and then and revising those attendance maps as we need to. And so rather than looking at each individual parent's concerns, it's more about like, are the systems in place to accommodate that? If they need a bus and the bus is taking 45 minutes, then what are our bus transportation policies that would help that family out?
It's systems. It's creating those systems and structures to allow the administration to respond to individual opportunities, challenges as they come up.
And that may be very different than, say, like how a city council may operate,
Right.
where they've actually got people like knocking on doors and asking people like, do you want your trash picked up on Monday or Tuesday? Like the school board is not in that kind of level of weeds.
Doesn't work that way. So, I think one of as a school board watcher, there are several different kinds of meetings. So if you go to the school district website, they actually have a really fantastic page dedicated to the Board of Trustees. And they just redid it. Shout out to Nancy Fitzer, who's the board liaison for Greenville County Schools. She did an amazing job of really rethinking how that page is set up. Everything you would want to know about when meetings are, what the agenda items are, all the presentations, all of that is on there. So I really encourage you all who are interested in learning more about how the school board works to go there. So kind of three sort of categories of meetings. Some of these are similar to what you'll see in other elected bodies and how they work. Committee of the Whole meetings, or COW, the COW meeting, the regular session, the regular meeting, and then executive sessions. And then there are also special called meetings that kind of fall into a separate category. So my personal jam is the COW. Explain what the Committee of the Whole meeting is and why it's so important to the trustees to help them make the right decisions for who they represent.
So it used to be that the board had these little committees. So there was a finance committee, there was an instruction committee, there was an advocacy committee, there was an employee relations committee. And those committees met and they made decisions, and then those decisions were sent up to the board. And what the board realized way before I was there was it meant a few people knew a lot about a few things, and everyone else was just waiting for the board meeting to learn about those things. And so they changed it to a committee of the whole model, which is the COW, where instead of a few of us hearing about finance, we all 12 get a presentation on finance, and then we all 12 ask questions. And then if we're ready, that information gets moved forward to the board meeting 2 weeks later, where we're actually going to be asked to actually vote on the thing.
If there's a thing to be voted on. And sometimes stuff presented at COW is just for information to sort of inform those decisions.
Yep. So we could have a whole instruction conversation on just how are our third grade math scores.
Which is so interesting. And the great thing about COW, they're at 9:00 on the second Tuesday of the month. So there's one a month. They're live broadcast on the district's YouTube channel. Usually there's a link right on the homepage of the GCS website on when it's going on. So you can listen live, but they're also recorded. You can learn a lot. Any sort of presentations about when test scores come out, they always have a conversation about that. Right now, we're going through a really deep dive into how Greenville County Schools serves students with special needs. I'm sure there will be a presentation about that soon that will come and be presented at COW. It's a really great place. I've learned so much listening to COWs.
And they're long. I mean, they start at 9 a.m.
They
and they may go to 3, 4 o'clock. But you're right. And the other thing that I love about COWs is that the COW is the opportunity for the board to say, an individual board member to say, I'd like to know more about X. And so like I remember in my first year, one of the things I wanted to know about was our after school programs. Like, what is the difference between an after school and an extended day program? How much do they cost? How many kids are in them?
Who's paying for it? Is the district paying for it? Yeah, all of that.
And so, I got a 1-hour presentation on this is the system that is extended day programs. This is how they're funded. And then the board could use that information either to answer constituent concerns or to talk about, like, is there a change in policy that needs to occur as a result of what we've learned here?
COW meetings are actually open to the public. So they actually have a comments period at the top. So sometimes people will come and speak, not as often as they do for the regular board meetings, but that is on the agenda. But you can sit there and you can listen, and then you can certainly watch it at home afterwards. So often what will happen if there's a particular policy change or something needs to be voted on, it will be initially approved at the committee or not, at the committee of the whole meeting, and then it gets moved to the regular board meeting. So the regular board meeting is, as exactly what it says, it's at 6 p.m. on the 4th. Usually it's the 4th Tuesday of the month, not always, but usually. So talk about the regular meeting and what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that people miss if they don't know all of this about the COW, is that they come to the regular board meeting and there's a 15-minute discussion on a thing that was talked about for 2 hours 2 weeks before. And so they may see it and be like, well, why is nobody sharing anything?
Why is no one asking these questions?
Well, it's because
Yeah.
we asked them 2 weeks ago and we got our answers. And so probably you're only asking follow-up questions, or you're asking questions that a constituent said, hey, you didn't ask this 2 weeks ago. Will you ask this now? And so it's really just a chance to make sure everybody's on the same page. So, yeah, so that's typically what's going to happen. So, a good example might be, like, let's say the district wants to approve some new purchase of a new property. Then we may talk about that at the COW, but it won't be until the board meeting that actually, like, this thing is now, we need you to vote on this thing, and are we going to do this thing or not?
It's the official vote. And sometimes there will be some conversation at the regular board meeting, questions that came up in the middle. And sometimes, honestly, school board members are elected officials and they want their people to know that they're paying attention. And so sometimes questions that maybe were asked at COW will be reiterated. That is obviously at the discretion of the members, and I get that, right? Because most people are paying attention to the regular board meetings more. And the other thing, so comments from the public are also welcomed at the top of the regular meeting, and that's when most people, if they're going to speak, will come speak. You can sign up online, I think, for 24 hours before the meeting, and then you can sign up in person. I think it opens at maybe 5:15 and then closes at 5:40. Again, check the website for that. But you can sign up in person and then go, and you have 3 minutes, unless a lot of people have signed up, and then you may cut it to 2. But it's a really great opportunity to, share if you've walked a challenge or something up the pipeline and you want the trustees to know about something. It's again, public forum. So it's an important time for that kind of feedback from the constituents.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would want people to know is that there's very little opportunity at the board meeting for new business to be done, because it's usually getting done at the COW. And so, like, one of the things that I could tell people would be really frustrated about is they would come to the board meeting and they would say, I want the board to do something about the amount of time kids get in recess. But there's not a place in the board meeting for me to introduce a new recess policy. I've got to go back through the COW, which means it's going to take 30, 60 days to get it through the system. And, sometimes I think people feel like they're not being heard, but it's just because the process requires a different timeline than you want.
And then sometimes you have executive sessions. So that's something that you'll often hear that will happen usually before the main meetings. And the current chair of the trustees, Dr. Stiles, when she comes in, she starts the meeting and says, want to update the public that we met in executive session about certain matters. Sometimes it's, special exemptions. Sometimes it's employee issues, no votes were taken, or whatever the action might be. It's an opportunity for the Board of Trustees to discuss sensitive matters involving particular people where they have a responsibility to kind of provide that oversight.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I think a great example of that was the district's decision to adopt the Evolve program, where we had school detectors. And so the district actually took us through the whole process, showed us all the protocols that were in place that they felt like we should be aware of. And then we had a chance to ask questions about, like, well, where are the blind spots? How do we know that this is going to effectively deter weapons? Have you tested it? All of those things we would want to have an executive session. You would not want to have a public discussion about, these are the protocols, these are the gaps we've found.
You don't want everybody to know all of those things. Yeah.
So then we came
That's a good
out of
example.
executive session with everybody comfortable with what they heard, and we voted to fund the Evolve program. And I think, that was one of those places where people emailed me and said, well, why didn't you ask any questions?
Yeah.
And I was like, because we've already, we literally walked through the system in a way that, wasn't, I think, really appropriate for the whole public to be a part of.
That brings up a good point of trust and transparency. And I think one of the things that I really encourage folks to do, because, I've taken the time to know the trustees, I'm present at all the school board meetings. Y'all come join me. These are people making decisions. They are making decisions. They take their work very seriously. That idea that if someone isn't asking questions, generally speaking, it's because they've asked them somewhere else or in another setting, I think it is important to try and to build that trust. And that's why I like these podcasts, because it's an opportunity for people to kind of go behind the curtain. The other kinds of meetings that you will often see for school board are special called sessions. What are some of the things that a special called meeting might address?
Yeah, so special called meetings typically involve like a specific topic that doesn't really fit into this process. So like we could have a special called meeting about our third grade reading scores. And so it could be a board member, it could be the administration. Somebody has decided that we need to spend some time talking about a specific thing that may not require action. It may require action, but it's going to require a little bit different format than the typical
It could be like an
meeting.
advocacy. If you were going to pass an advocacy statement that you wanted to send down to Columbia,
Something we
for
had to do pretty
example.
quickly, maybe that it is going to fit on the calendar. Or it could be something that, like, I don't need you to vote on third grade reading scores, but I want you to see how every one of our elementary schools have changed in their third grade reading score performance over the last 2 years, so that in 6 months, when we come to you and talk to you about taking a strategy we learned from one school and replicating it in the other elementary schools, this is where that's going to show up in the budget.
And unlike executive sessions, special called meetings are open to the public. People don't often go, but you could if there's a topic but those are open to the public. And I think that's important from a transparency standpoint too. As you kind of look back, the challenges of working in this kind of, you get thrown together with these folks. Like what are some of the challenges of working together with a school board, with fellow members?
I think that one of the biggest challenges that I saw before I came on the board was I had no idea what was going on. And no one I felt like was being transparent with me about the actions that were happening at the board. And I think that as a board member, that was one of the things that was really important to me was how do I keep my constituents
How do I
informed?
communicate with the folks who voted me? Yeah.
And not just about like the thing I did, but like the thing I'm being asked to do in 2 weeks so that the constituents have an opportunity to respond. And some board members do that through newsletters, and some of them do it through social media, and some of them do it through going to talk to their Sunday school class. But I think that is the biggest challenge is you've got this huge swath of land and people. I don't know all of them personally. And so other than the people I see at church or at my son's baseball game, most of the people I'm communicating with electronically. But keeping people informed, I think, is a really big challenge because they're getting information from somewhere and it may not be accurate. And if they don't trust you as someone who's keeping them informed, then they may never come to you and say, hey, I heard that there was an incident at my school and nobody told me about it.
Yeah. Or so many issues. It's like especially in this day and age, it's like a game of telephone where there's some kernel of something and then it gets kind of passed around and passed around and passed around. And so again, that's why I really encourage folks to build those relationships. If you have students in the schools and you hear something, engage with the teacher, engage with the principal, build a relationship with your school board member, really kind of get those facts about what's going on.
Yeah, and I just think that's so important because I think sometimes people hear that something happened or they hear that the district is doing something or they hear that a teacher is doing something, and it may not actually have even happened in this state. I mean, I remember multiple times people emailed me concerned about a post they saw about something that happened in Greenville, and it was a different Greenville. But they saw that this thing happened in a Greenville school, and they assumed that that meant it was happening in all of our schools.
I've had things too where folks have come to me about something and there's some information that I'm not privy to, obviously. And I think that's the other piece of it that's really hard. And I do think it's, again, kind of back to that trust. And I've heard that a lot. If you've been listening to these podcasts and you hear a principal speak or a teacher speak, and I think that the need to trust is hard. It's a hard thing. And I think figuring out a way to get there, particularly around schools, which are, again, kind of in our communities and of our communities in a really particular way, I think is really, really valuable. And that's something we're hoping to build through these kinds of conversations. What about bright spots? Like what are some things that you're really proud of?
The thing that I'm most proud of that we did as a district was raising teacher pay. When I came on the school board, teacher pay was, I think we were 30th in the state, and now we're in the top 10. And not only percentage-wise, but just amount-wise. Like, I think we're getting to a place where teachers' pay is equivalent to a livable wage that rewards
And
them
we're
for those
starting to
advanced
hear that
degrees.
it's having an impact. Like more people are enrolling in teacher prep programs, and that's a statewide commitment. And again, kudos to everybody for raising the issue and then advocating around it, and particularly to Greenville trustees for being ahead of it, being ahead of the curve. We were I think the first district in the state to pay 40, and now we're above 50, and really maintaining that competitive edge in terms of hiring and retaining the best is really a priority.
I think the other thing that I'm really proud of in Greenville is that families are really proud of their schools. And if you look at, surveys, parents are surveyed every year. So we have pretty consistent data that, most of our school satisfaction surveys are in the upper 90s, 90% positive responses. And I think that it's easy sometimes to hear, particularly people running for elected office, to say, the problem with our country is our schools are terrible. But then if you ask a parent, like, what do you think about your child's school? It's usually incredibly positive. And I think that one of the things that we have are a lot of really great schools, and we have parents who are proud of those schools. I think the need we have is for those parents to repeat that message to people who don't have kids in school. If you are an adult and your child is an adult, then it could have been a decade since the last time you set foot in an elementary school. And what is happening today in an elementary school did not happen 12 years ago, and certainly didn't happen 30 years ago. And so I think just being an advocate to say, like, I have been in my child's school and I have seen this happen, whatever it is that I think is remarkable, it probably didn't happen 20 years ago.
Yeah. And also share that news. And I think that's the other thing I would encourage folks to do, is to share the things that you are happy about at school board meetings and to your school board representative and to your principal and to the administration, because that is really valuable. The vast majority of school-age children in Greenville attend Greenville County schools. That's because the schools are excellent. And I think we really want to lift that up and celebrate that here on the EdTalks podcast.
I think sometimes people don't understand the very small number of people who reach out to their board member. And so if I was a board member and I got 3 emails about, a problem with a youth sports program, like 3 emails would be a crisis.
Right.
And the superintendent would get a call if I got 3 emails from someone concerned about a high school football program or concerned about a biology instructor. But that means there's probably 100 people who are delighted with what's happening who haven't responded. And I don't think you should do it every day, but I think every once in a while, like if you have a good experience with your marching band program, you should email your board member and say, like, hey, I just want you to know I'm a parent in the Greenville High marching band program, and I am happy with what is happening here, because those positive emails will also create some really good opportunities for the district to see where the great stuff are happening.
Right. And what, from an investment standpoint, I think continuing to say these, because they're our schools. If you've just moved here, they're your schools too. If you have no kids in the schools, they're your schools too. That's the power of public education and public schools in our communities. Thank you so much, Derek. I appreciate you being here, and hope you all have enjoyed School Board 101, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time. Simple Civics Ed Talks is a joint project of Greater Good Greenville, Greenville First Steps, and Public Education Partners Greenville County.
Hi, Simple Civics Greenville County listeners, Nathaniel here. If you've made it this far, then we think you'll really love our newsletter. Sign up for bonus content, updates, and more right in your inbox. Look for the link in the description that says newsletter to sign up, or visit us at simplecivicsgreenvillecounty.org. Find the link in the menu that says newsletter and sign up there. We'll see you again next week.